So Craig, I have some questions for you today.
I believe so.
Did you create Bitcoin?
Yes.
Why?
It actually goes way back into my past. I've been involved with monetary economics and everything for a long time. And before even the first bit I'll talk about, back in the 90s, in 2005, I enrolled with the University of Newcastle. I did a master's degree there. Part of why I chose that little out-of-the-way university was they had the Center for Monetary Economics. So the two of the people I learnt from while I was there, basically annoyed occasionally, were some of the founders of DigiCash and eCash. So they were academics who worked with David Shaum and helped develop the original aspects of cryptocurrency, helped launch Mark Twain Bank, and they were involved with that whole industry. So it might have been a little out of the way university, but it was a little out of the way university with some of the greatest people in cryptocurrency. And they ended up with this little out of the way university because everyone had thought that cryptocurrency can't work. They'd given up on it. And part of why I saw why Bitcoin needed to be different, why cryptocurrency had always failed, when you get to a certain size, law enforcement starts to be active. You start introducing people who use crime and are getting away with it. If it's an illegal system, if it's facilitating crime, if it's anonymous, eventually you get a bigger and bigger user base of people breaking the law, and then it gets shut down. And people don't seem to understand. It's distributed, it keeps going stuff. Liberty Reserve had 30,000 different nodes with bank accounts globally. And there was a takedown that was done across over 70 countries with law enforcement officials from over 100 different departments involving takedowns of people all across the world. Places like Sierra Leone, places like Costa Rica, places where no American jurisdiction is involved at all, were all taken down. All the money was seized. And the 6 billion seized in Liberty Reserve is more valuable than Bitcoin and cryptocurrency right now. This market cap crap, the reality is that was 6 billion real dollars. 6 billion real dollars would push Bitcoin up to 50,000 a Bitcoin.
So you obviously were aware of prior attempts to create digital cash by other people. What lessons or things did you learn from that, and how did you apply them into Bitcoin?
I came to understand that money requires traceability. Fungibility is in law. It's not something that's native. To be fungible, you have to actually have something that is received for valid consideration. There are things like source of wealth laws. So if you have Bitcoin and you can't explain where it came from, in Britain, in America, it's actually able to be seized. Because if you haven't paid tax, you can't explain where it's from. The law actually exists today for them to seize it. Right now. So there's no, oh, I'm okay, it's Bitcoin. And you can trace everything. I'm sorry, but there are already cases taking down dark websites. So all this Tor stuff protecting me, Tor gives you no protection. I'm sorry.
So let's dig in a little bit. Approximately what year, what point in time did you really begin working on Bitcoin?
I started on a failed, totally stupid concept back in the 90s.
Okay.
And I also had the concept of a paid sort of network. And all of it was a total screw up, fuck up, and whatever else that wasted lots of money and got nowhere.
Okay. And then when did you get, I suppose, the idea that really led to what Bitcoin is?
that really came about after a bit of time with Newcastle and the other. So it was a combination of the guys at Newcastle. Also at the same time, I shortly after that started a master's degree in law where I studied international banking, financial law, etc. over at Northumbria. And then I started really understanding the history of money. Between that and the other aspect that sort of changed everything was in 2005, when I'm doing this, I had to get a real job because I don't know if everyone remembers, but there was a big crackdown on gambling. And I had a lot of involvement and a lot of clients in like Lassiter's and Playboy and whatever else that all shrank because the Americans stopped allowing SWIFT to be used globally. And
you're talking about the passage of the UEJA statute in the United States, right?
And that really made all those clients suddenly not able to spend money and not grow. And I was quite upset because these were licensed casinos. They were acting legally in the law, but they were still being squeezed out.
So you were working with them and then you had to get a real job. What real job did you get at this time?
I started with BDO. I became an auditor. So I developed CATS, which is computer-aided audit techniques. I wrote software as anti-fraud detection and software to basically complete audits faster.
And so you were working on Bitcoin, I assume, at night or on weekends, and this was a side project?
All of the above. I actually sort of tried to talk some of the people into some of my projects in BDO. I ended up having one of my partners, Alan Granger, was a director of some of my companies for a while. But I had approached the company and I wanted to bring this into BDO. I said it would be great for audit. And I tried to explain that we could, for a few servers, we could set this stuff up that I'd developed. And they said, what the fuck, we're auditors, go away.
So walk us through the process just generally that you went through. Like, did you start writing? Did you just start trying to figure out the components of a technical system? Did you code first? Just tell, how did you work through this?
It was a combination of things. So the first part was actually figuring out, well, it's a dynamic Stackelberg game. What you're going to start seeing as the fee now disappears, as the subsidy disappears, the reward will actually become variable in time. Basically, it's a linear sawtooth function that is Poisson distributed. Now, what people don't understand there is because you get a low fee at the beginning of block discovery, and as it goes on, you get a higher fee, that's actually going to create a scenario that settles the time closer and closer to 10 minutes. Because if you think about it, someone's just discovered a block. That means they're not going to get many fees in the next block. So they'll turn hashing down and save power. Then as fees grow, they'll start turning hashing up. If it goes past 10 minutes, suddenly it's a big payment, and everyone, even those who aren't economical when they're thinking about mining, will start chucking in. But this only happens as the subsidy disappears. And the subsidy was thought of like, because I did a bit of economics and whatever else, as similar to situations like South Korea. And you build nascent industries, but how do you get rid of the subsidy? So you just algorithmically get rid of the subsidy. You don't explain, hey, we're going to build you an ecosystem and then turn it away. We're just going to make the game set in the beginning.
What was the hardest thing or things for you to figure out?
Some of this actually changed right until October. So the fee reward and other aspects there were only finally decided in October 2008.
2008, right before the white paper was posted online?
Fairly much, yes.
Okay. So there have been other names associated with possible work on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have help?
Everyone has help,
okay.
But Was someone else Satoshi? No. Dave, I wouldn't be sane and whatever else without him.
I'm talking about Dave Kleiman.
Yes. Hal Finney, the code wouldn't have kept going. It actually fell over in January 2009 several times before we found bugs. So if Hal hadn't jumped in, it would have never launched.
Okay. Anyone else?
Lots of other people gave me critique. Mike Hearn, Gavin, even Zuku, even people like Blue Matt. All these people, without their help, they just wouldn't have.
Did you give drafts of the white paper to other people to review and critique?
Yes.
Okay. Many people or just a few?
More than one, less than 20.
Okay.
There were a number. Plus, I put it up on a site, upload.ae, which was actually run out of Instra in Melbourne. Luckily, that got taken down and whatever else, but Instra was running upload.ae out of Melbourne in August 2008. So we moved everything.
Did you write the white paper?
Yes.
How long did it take you?
It was a mess that got changed so many times, and there's so many iterations of it. There's lots of similar ones. It goes back years, but it also was a complete different product years ago. I actually had the concept of giving shares out to miners at one stage, but that doesn't work.
But you gave drafts of the white paper to people for review, critique?
Yes, I have.
Let's talk about the client software, version 0.1. Who wrote the code?
Most of it came from me. When I contacted Wei, he gave me a lot of cryptographic code. And
how did you contact Wei?
Email.
Only by email?
I don't think there was any other way with Wei. I'm pretty sure there wasn't.
All right. Did anyone else help you with the code?
Oh, of course. Bits were sent out in the early days. People reviewed it, people critiqued it, people said it sucked, people said it won't scale. James Donald sat there going, government will take it over.
How did you get Hal Finney and Dave Kleiman involved in helping you with this project?
Dave I'd known years. So Dave was my best friend for a long time. Hal and others, I was told by the guys at University of Newcastle. I mean, I asked, where should I send this? And I didn't say where do I send Bitcoin, but I mean, I was saying if I'm looking for information on cryptocurrencies and creating coins, where do I go? And their first comment was, don't bother, it's not worth it. And the next bit was, but you go to the peer-to-peer foundation, you go to the cryptography mailing list, and you send it out to these.
So let's talk about the name Satoshi Nakamoto. Did you choose that?
Yes.
Well, why Satoshi Nakamoto?
Well, Nakamoto was the main bit. Nakamoto comes to Tomasu Nakamoto. He was in the sort of the restoration period, Japan, as really it was isolating itself and restricting. So around, but a little bit earlier than Adam Smith, he came up with a whole lot of concepts that are very similar. And he wrote, a lot of his works have been lost now, but he wrote about economics and the need to trade. And he wrote this as the shogunate was restricting and locking Japan in. And he becomes the forgotten sort of other side of the coin to Adam Smith. Adam Smith was in a country that was opening up and allowing trade and flourishing, as this other guy doing the same thing was in a country that was restricting, as government was clamping down, as he ended up being killed because of the ideas of free trade that he was promoting.
Why did you choose to use a pseudonym as opposed to posting the white paper or writing online as Craig Wright?
I had the stories I was told from the guys in the Monetary Engineering Center who told me all of the things that happened, all of the crackdowns, all of the problems that occurred. They told me when I talked to them about DigiCash and whatever else. So when I talked to people who had that background and were there, they told me nightmares.
Yeah. It'd be scary to do it under your name. So where did Satoshi come from? We covered Nakamoto, but Satoshi.
Satoshi is me being Australian and taking the piss out of things because I read The Economist and I remember their article, which actually does exist from '88, with rising from the ashes. So the phoenix would rise and global money would take and hold and we'd have one electronic money. And of course, at the same time, we have this silly thing called Pokemon, which people still run around, including Neil.
Yep. Good job, Neil, wherever you are.
Yeah, and some of us moved on. But most, until I started saying this, most people didn't realize Ash, the character there, he was actually called Satoshi in Japan.
Got it. So that's where Satoshi comes from. The bitcoin.org domain name.
Yes.
Who registered that?
I did.
Why did you register that?
Because you need a domain to host things.
Okay. And good answer. Why did you want to put up a website?
How else do people find things? This is the internet. I worked for ISPs in '93. So, I mean...
Who created the content for the site?
Me. That's why it was so ugly.
Did you do the design yourself?
That's why everyone said it was so ugly.
Satoshi wrote emails from an email address, satoshien@gmx.com.
Yes.
Who managed that email box?
Primarily me, until it got compromised, and now God knows who manages it.
Got it. What about posting a Satoshi on online message boards? Satoshi and people have, archived a lot of these online posts from the early days. Did you post a Satoshi on online message boards, or did more than one person?
No, that was generally me on those ones. Occasionally, Dave would interact. We had a few IRC communications, and he reviewed what I said. One thing I learned, I had a good friend from SANS, Stephen Northcutt, who was one of the founders of SANS. I remember right back at the beginning, he told me back at the beginning of Bitcoin, what I've got to do is, not about Bitcoin, but generally, walk away. So by that, I mean I had to post something, create an answer, and walk away from it and come back. And so that's why I was always a lot calmer, because it's easy to get heated, and then you spend a bit of time, you walk away, and then you can post things later. You can plan them. It can be nice and calm.
Speaking of walking away, at some point, Satoshi walked away from the Bitcoin project.
No, I didn't.
Okay. How would you describe it?
I didn't walk away. I went off to prove that I wasn't wrong.
Okay. That's very Craig speak. What do you mean by that?
So what happened was Silk Road and a whole lot of other things, hundreds of other sites people haven't heard about, like Hydra and dark.web websites appeared. And they're not as nice as everyone likes to be led into believing. Contrary to popular belief, guns were sold on Silk Road, all sorts of things, nasty, nasty stuff. And
they started using Bitcoin.
And they started using Bitcoin. And I honestly, I did this not thinking that it was going to be a crime coin. I thought...
Did that surprise you?
It shouldn't have, but it did, yes. Yeah. It saddened me. I actually thought I'd failed. I thought everything I've been doing for years, I thought this was my last attempt, my last time I will ever get to do this, and I thought I would absolutely failed.
Did you try to contact the operators on any of those sites like Silk Road to say, please stop using Bitcoin?
No, but I don't think that would have worked anyway. Everyone was telling me this is what it's for. I had some of the current core guys telling me this is the reason for these things. This is good. This opposes government. James Donnell, the whole time, until he disappeared again, told me how the only way this works is if we take the sort of foundation out of government, which is...
But you did make a public plea to WikiLeaks to not use Bitcoin. Why did you do that, but not contact the other companies?
WikiLeaks isn't good journalism for a start, but in particular, they were being shut down from PayPal and blocked because they were releasing a whole lot of things that they shouldn't have. And I didn't want really to be the focus of that. We're talking 2010. Bitcoin hardly had a price. No one was using it. The only places you could do anything, use it, were Silk Road, which sucked at the end, where Liberty Reserve was starting to do it for crime. Everything was going the opposite of what I wanted. Everything was turning around and becoming everything I was trying to stop.
Let's talk about a few things in quick succession about Bitcoin's system that I know I get asked a lot about, and I'm sure you do as well, but let's answer some of them. Why a proof of work consensus system?
Basically, proof of work is a way of actually signaling that can't be cheated. There's no other way. Anyone who owns a share, anyone who doesn't have to expend something provably that they can't get back can cheat. So I was talking about this on Slack the other day, and I talked people through a way that with something like a DAO, where it's a proof of stake system, you can halve and create and halve and create a series of subcoins. So you start with 255 units, and then 128 of those can be set to control the majority. Then you halve that again, and each time you keep 51%. And what that allows you to do is have 51% of 51% of 51% that controls the entire network. So anonymously, in some sort of proof of stake system, you end up with one vote in 5 billion able to manipulate the entire system. And there's no way around that.
Okay, the 21 million coin circulation, fixed amount, where did that come from?
Bitcoin's an integer value. So people don't seem to realize that the decimal point's only in what you display in your wallet. There's a fixed decimal. And I believe things are probably getting better in some of the modern chips and whatever else. But the reality is there's only so much range before you start getting errors and rounding and processing. And you can't have processing errors. You can't have rounding errors. It's a little bit overly conservative. You could actually expand it out a couple bits, but it's better to be conservative and not perfect. I mean, after all, it's 2.1 quadrillion bits.
Okay, how about the average 10-minute block interval?
The average 10-minute block is a combination of propagation and discovery. So you've got to remember that you're trying to find and propagate blocks that have to have a lot of information. So what you're trying to do is not 1 meg in time. You're trying to do the world's global information. And if you start moving that too close, if you're doing it in 15 seconds, you actually have constraint periods the natural limits on propagation globally become larger than the time to add transactions, and you hit a scale ceiling. So it's really a balance. I mean, I think the optimum was worked out at about 8.23 seconds or something like that, but 10 minutes is much easier to understand. It's much easier to work out. It just gets a bit wanky if you want to do 8.23 seconds or something.
Let's talk about the original Bitcoin scripting language and opcodes. How did you choose what opcodes to put in or not put in?
It's fairly much standard forth. So the difference is with some of the things I've started now that we've patented them, releasing like hash chains coupled with what we've deemed R-puzzle, etc. That allows you to have a means of securely proving functional loops that are done by other parties, so that you can only have a valid payment if you take the last calculated payment and put it into the next value. So you don't need to make sure that everything runs in a miner as a loop. What you need to make sure is that if anyone cheats, they lose their money. So it's still effectively a loop, because you cheat, you don't get paid.
Is there something you can tell us about Bitcoin that people don't understand that only Bitcoin's creator would?
Most of it.
Okay, come on, Greg.
Okay, so all of the things I've been starting to teach you. Bitcoin isn't PGP. That's the whole privacy model there. We don't treat keys as sacrosanct. And in fact, you can start doing things like using the actual encoded value of the R portion of a signature to then enable you to have different keys that can be added afterwards. So if I can create something where I'm going to say the value R is predetermined, and I can put that into a redeem script, that means the check on S is related to the key that you give after the fact. So like a hash puzzle where you put a solution in there, you can now put a key in there that solves a puzzle, allowing you to actually have users determine keys afterwards.
The Bitcoin white paper talks about SPV wallet, simplified yes. Payment verification. You feel like not enough attention has been placed upon that from the
Correct.
Bitcoin world, and in particular, the relevance development on the edges. Something you mentioned to me recently.
Yes.
What is that? How is that relevant?
So Bitcoin is peer-to-peer, but every aspect is a separate peer-to-peer network. Miners form peer-to-peer networks. The problem is, in trying to make this simple, when I released the code, it was on Windows. Yes, I know, it was on Windows XP, it's horrible, move on. But the fact was, if I wanted everyone to be able to just download and start running things in the early days, I didn't want to make a Linux thing that only techies could run. I wanted anyone. So what we needed to do was start understanding that it needed to be split out into different functions. Your wallet is a peer-to-peer overlay network. I've said many times that Bitcoin is a Mandela network in implementation. Mandela networks are small world, ultra-connected graphs that form what is a giant node. These then have an overlay system that is a supplemental small world network. But they don't need to actually care about each other. What happens is in SPV, I have a transaction. I've been paid. I keep my transaction. Here's my transaction. That proves I've been paid. I now want to give Jimmy a transaction. I don't give Jimmy just the transaction. I give him the transaction and the one I received, both of them. Yes, it's a little bit extra, but we're only talking kilobytes. Jimmy now uses proper SPV, and all he does is keep the Merkle headers. The other part that I'm going to send him is the Merkle path. If I keep my transaction, I know where it's been mined. I have the Merkle path. I can give Jimmy my transaction and the Merkle root, and together with only the header, Jimmy can prove that my transaction has never been spent before. The miners have validated that, and that's all he needs to know. The hash in that Merkle path, the tree structure, and the transaction together give him 100% assurance of that SPV transaction, as long as no one has broken SHA-256, and that's then safe.
Let's talk about the beginning of the blockchain. You mentioned earlier the code fell over. So blockchain started January 3rd, 2009, Genesis block. How was the Genesis block created?
Well, basically, you choose the code bit there, you choose the key, you just pre-compute it, you pop it in the code. So it was there as an anchor. Okay. So the nature of how it was actually constructed was to be an anchor so that every node wouldn't go out and calculate their own. And people say it's wasting 50 Bitcoin, but it's not wasting anything because there was no value at the time. I mean, we're talking no exchanges, no users. I mean, for the first few days, I was the only user, then Hell and Dave and a few other people jumped in. But if I'm the only user in this network running 69 machines.
Were there 69 machines on day one?
Yeah.
Okay. All yours?
Yeah.
Where were they?
Actually had a farm shed that I converted. So there were a combination. I had a house in Lisseroe where the garage had a number of...
this is in Australia.
Yeah, a number of sort of racks and everything like that. And I had a cow shed in Bagnu where we had laid fiber to get fast internet and all the rest. And that had more racks. So that was basically, because I had a cattle ranch, it ran up there and all the machines were. The other aspect that fell over that I needed to address was Microsoft and Patch Tuesday. Anyone remember Patch Tuesday? I really hadn't thought about running a bunch of standalone Windows XP machines until everything turned off at the same time. So that was another reason Bitcoin, before the current blockchain turned off, apart from crashing, literally on that Tuesday night, everything updated, turned off and restarted, and just caused a massive, massive problem because the two things split and didn't sync. And I had not thought about that one. So that was the next part I had to do. I had to run around and I bought a whole lot of Microsoft licenses at excessive prices and installed a domain in there and a work group. And I set up a forest between my two locations and ran out all these machines, set up a WUS server, WSUS. For any Australians, we make fun of Microsoft because calling their servers a WUS. But we set up WUS servers, and Dave actually helped on some of that because I couldn't get it all done fast enough. I had to set up a full domain just to keep these Windows XP machines running so that we could say that they didn't actually all shut down at the same time, and I had to have rolling intervals. So
you're telling us Bitcoin started in a cowshed?
Yes.
Great, world money system. So code fell over when the blockchain started. Well, what happened? What was your reaction? What did you do?
Oh, fuck. I had to actually drive back and forward several hours, which was annoying. So my farm and my other house were 3 hours apart. So I actually had fights with the tax office over this because I had really big driving bills in that tax year because I had to drive back and forwards between my farm and all the rest. And well, they weren't happy. I was spending, it was 3 hours drive there, 3 hours back, starting machines, all the rest. And they tried to argue that it was a hobby. They said, I actually had a fight with the tax office that Bitcoin was a hobby. I guess in some ways you could argue it was a hobby, but it was a hobby I spent all my money in.
How long did it take you to get the code back up working?
Most of that whole week. I don't know if I slept much. I went back and forwards and yabbed on to people and lived on coffee and caffeine pills. That's when I discovered caffeine pills. I'd been stopping in truck stops and talking to truck drivers who basically gave me pills that I'm led to believe are caffeine.
What was happening with the blockchain during, well, I've seen you on those pills. So what was happening with blockchain during this period of time?
Oh, it kept falling over.
Yeah.
I mean, that first week was just abysmal. I mean, this is why you got the Genesis block and a week later, then suddenly things start mining.
So is that why? There's the week gap.
Yes.
Okay. So at some point you left Bitcoin, the project, in the hands of Gavin Andresen, right?
Yes.
Why? Why him?
Gavin's a good guy. Gavin's good coder. I thought he would run with the project and keep it aligned. Gavin's fault is he's too nice. I'm not trying to take away from him, but there are a lot of people who had other ideas, and Gavin's problem was he was too nice. One of the things I told Gavin at the end was, stop trying to make me into this shadowy figure, which was what everyone kept doing. Of course, I didn't help myself by not actually being known, but that's what I begged him anyway.
Is there anything that Gavin Andresen would know from his interactions with Satoshi Nakamoto that no one else would?
Yes.
Anything you can share?
I'll leave that to Gavin. Gavin and I, the reason he came over wasn't because of what everyone thinks. Gavin and I talked before he came over to London for our little session. And I explained, this is how you see me.
This is a proof session you did with him.
Yes. But before that, we'd been emailing, and I spoke to Gavin and I said, this is how you see me write as Craig Wright. This is what you see as Satoshi. This is the difference. This is why the difference.
So a lot of people out there ask, and they ask me all this time, why won't Craig just prove he's Satoshi Nakamoto? Why won't he just sign transactions using keys from certain blocks people talk about? Why?
There are lots of reasons there, but it's important to lock this down properly first before anything like that happens, because that's not proof, that's possession. And a lot of people want this concept of coder's law. I'm not going to do anything like that until I've proven through real means. Evidence is court, it's people. Bitcoin is not about taking people out of the system. It's not BitGold, it's not eGold, it's none of those things. It's a system that enables people to interact. The simple thing that we talked about was escrow. Escrow could allow something as simple as a court. The two parties here, Jimmy and I, can negotiate and say, we want this court and we want British law, or we want American law, and we could actually choose that and have an individual. But more in the future, we can start creating new things that have never existed. With Bitcoin, we can have a system that is the two of us agree, or one of us and a community function. For instance, we could set up a voting system as an arbitrator. We could outsource, say we're a medical body. We could then say, this medical body, the members who are all qualified, who are peers, can vote. So rather than the AMA the way it is, those people who are qualified medical people could set up their own organization that can be recognized by people, that has standards, that can vote, and that can be an arbitrator that we can choose. or there can be a competing version, and we can be with that.
If you could change one thing about your journey with Bitcoin since the beginning, or one thing you've done or not done, what would that be?
There have been lots of bumps in the road, lots of hard times, but I still wouldn't change anything, because we're at the point now where we're scaling, where things are working, and if I could go back and say my life would be easier, I still wouldn't do that, because I don't know that it would end up where it is now, where we are actually starting to work.
What has your Bitcoin journey taught you about people?
They're crazier than I ever thought.
And I know you're very close with your family. People don't see you in that light, unlike how I and your friends see you. What's the thing that has most affected you and your family with this Bitcoin journey?
A lot of these attacks really hurt my family. And I shouldn't have to go out there if I'm not, this whole hypocrisy. Craig Wright won't show us his degrees. Craig Wright won't do this. Why? I'm not asking for money from you. I'm not asking for a job. Do you know what the definition of privacy is? It means if I go to you asking for something, I prove based on what I'm asking. I don't go out to the world and pull my pants down and show you everything I've got. It doesn't work that way. That's not private. I'm not Neil. I don't flash. Sorry, Neil.
There's always the party tonight. So we keep them private, but in this moment, if there's something you could say to your wife and family, what would it be about how they have supported you with Bitcoin?
All of my family are wonderful, especially my wife. My wife is unbelievable. There's no other way to put it. Not many other people would put up with me. I'm better than I was. I'll never be nice. I spent too many years working in back rooms, in universities, in ivory towers, and that isolated me from people as I was learning. And people still scare me. And I don't get on, I'm not good with groups, I'm learning. I'm getting better. When I first came out, it scared me shitless. Groups, crowds and everything like that, I'm not good with. I'm good with one or two people. I'm good standing at the front of a conference and running off and disappearing, which before Bitcoin, if you're at any conference I presented at, that's what you saw. Academic guy, paper, gone. I get to know family. I have one or two good friends, and that's it. I'm not egregious. I don't go out there and have everyone like me. But my wife still handles that, and my kids are there. And she makes the right excuses for me when I blow people off at parties. And she makes sure that people understand, yes, it's just Craig. So, thank you.
There's so much more that can be said and discussed, but we'll wrap this conversation and maybe we'll have another one another time soon, Craig. Thank you for your candor and honesty. And on behalf of all of those who are in the Society of Bitcoin and BSV, I will say thank you, my friend.
thank you all. Really, at the end of the day, you're what's going to make this work, not me. I can deliver you a base protocol, but people don't want a base protocol alone. They need applications, and they need things that are pretty, and they need things that are working. And we'll make sure that the protocol is there and scales. And I can do plumbing. And I can be in the background making sure my team are doing plumbing. And we'll deliver you stable plumbing. And from that, you can build things that will amaze me, that will amaze everyone. And you don't know how much doing that means to me. Things like Money Button, things like Handcash, things like all the submissions that we've been seeing lately, extending all of this for me and taking it further. And we're going to give you tools to make it even more than that. And the only real reward I want from this is you to take that and build something better, not coder's law. I don't want a world where we isolate people. Yes, I've got a PhD in computer science and economics. And yes, I also have a degree in theology. You can do both. I know Silicon Valley thinks that's not possible. But I don't want a world where we have people isolated by machines. I want a world where they're integrated. I want a world where people are paid to be part of everything, so that they will be, so that it's not tragedy of the commons, so that everyone can be part of something they can be proud of. People stop being proud when they got government handouts, because when you're on the dole, when you're on a basic income that's equal, you don't have anything to be proud of. You didn't create anything. You didn't build anything. You're not part of anything. When you get a handout from government and you're taught that you're worthless, you end up thinking you're worthless. I saw this when I was doing pastoral stuff in Central Coast and whatever. And I saw it when I was in Africa. People need a chance to interact, even if it's small. So some of the things you've seen today, some examples like where you can have an app on your phone and you're just a little part, but you're a part. That's what society is. When you're being paid to run a peer app to do something, not Amazon's getting paid to do everything for you. Not Google's being paid to do everything for you. Not Facebook's being paid to do everything for you. Not bots, but people. Not a world where we talk about everyone being replaced by autonomous cars that don't exist and probably won't in my lifetime. But people paying for services, paying for goods, and having augmented systems that help us interact better. That's what I see as a society built on Bitcoin. And I thank you for actually helping make that dream for me.
Thank you, Craig. I'm going to ask you to stay here and help me present the hackathon finalists. Come right here.
Okay.
Right here. All right. It's time to close the conference now with, speaking of inspiring the next generation and turning it over to all of you and those around the world who would build upon this platform. Let's welcome to the stage our finalists again from the BSV Hackathon. It's time to announce our winners. Let's give them a round of applause. Come on stage. You guys ready? Come over here. I'm going to keep you with me. Stand here. All right. Helping me to present the results is Steve Shatters, Chief Technology Officer of nChain. Steve, you ready to do this, Steve?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Do you have the envelopes, please?
I have the envelopes.
Okay.
Do you want to flourish?
All right. Are we ready for this? Now, as I announce the results, we're going to be seeing, where the funds went, if they got funds yet. So give me, let's find out who is third place. All right, here we go. Steve, you're so good. You're my new Vanna. All right, we need a drum roll, please, people. Our third place finalists, receiving 50 BSV coins, Polyglot. All right, and do you have your wallet? I think you've got your, what wallet do you have today? Hand cash?
Hand cash.
Woo! Don't spend that all at once. Congratulations. Thank you. Second place. Now, when I announce the second place winner, you'll know who's first, but we're going to give the second place winner our undivided attention and exuberation, right? Absolutely. Our second place contestant is receiving 100 BSV coins. You want to read this?
Tonic Powell.
Thank you. And what wallet are you using today?
I'm using Centi.
I hope you're going to share that with your team.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you for your submission.
Thank you, Dr. Wright.
And that, of course, means that our first place, well, I don't need this to tell you, our first place winner of the first ever BSV Hackathon, walking home with a whopping 250 BSV coins.
Uptime SV.
Woo-hoo! Congratulations. Who's got a wallet here? And what wallet are you using today? Relay X, great. Congratulations to all of our hackathon finalists. All right, thank you. I'll send you guys off stage. Thank you very much. Thank you. You stay here with me. Great, thank you. So that brings us to an end. I hope you've had an exciting time in Toronto. How was CoinGeek Toronto? As I said at the beginning, we have come and convened here in Toronto at a critical moment in the history of Bitcoin. I'm so thrilled all of you were here to not just learn and meet each other, but to feel what is, I truly believe, a family being created in addition to a society around the world, supporting the original vision of Bitcoin, Satoshi vision. We'll see many of you, I hope, for the next one. B Society, great job. We'll see many of you, I hope, for CoinGeek Asia, first week of October, where we continue the journey to create the world's new money and global enterprise blockchain. I want to conclude now the way I began, by leaving with you some thoughts about our experience all together with Bitcoin. And I think I have a video coming on to help me with this experience one more time. It should mean even more to you now, I hope, because I think our experience today reminds us, especially Craig in particular, after what you've told us, that you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides. Just like hopes of Craig springing high, still, I'll rise. Did you want to see Craig broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by his soulful cries? I don't think so. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise, you rise, we rise, Satoshi rises, and Bitcoin rises. Thank you and see you tonight.